Ramamurti
Hi.
with us and agreed to meet you to share his expertise on these very mattering issues of the regionalism, international politics, international economics, and trending issues of global development today. And we have a great pleasure to listen to him and have this lecture sharing his vision for these vital issues. So please welcome Professor Brown. Then its floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. How's everybody? I hope my pronunciation and slang abbreviation is understandable. So today, basically, I will do my best to give you some views and course outline on contemporary regionalism and the reasons why I call it contemporary regionalism in international relations. The course guideline, basically, I have it in my mind, was to encourage on a perspective where the students will have a working knowledge on the current issues, theories, and debates in international affairs, and focus on cause and effects, because many of what we see today is basically a reason of cause and effects that is going on in the world. So the cause and effects aspect of the course will be guided through historical perspective. I will try my best to be as neutral as possible to encourage the thought process among the students, so that you are able to gauge yourself what is suitable, what you feel is your opinion, and then we can compare it with current trends of thoughts. There is no right or wrong, there is only a view, and that view will guide your formulating of opinions of how international relations affect aspects of politics, aspect of commerce, and economics today. A lot of the historical things that have happened in the past is very valid on current developments today. So it is very important to always review on how historical things have happened and how it impacts us today. And this will stimulate critical awareness on the strength and limitations on international affairs and its subfields to understand the complexities today. One interesting aspect today regarding international relations is, of course, with the onset of COVID-19. So this subject of contemporary international relations is very, very valid today, so that we can be well equipped to project future developments in international relations, okay, and how it will shape the future of regionalism post-COVID. So that is some of my intention of how to do this overview. Now, the two-step approach in this course that I have thought about for you guys is step one is to develop students knowledge and understanding on the historical development and theoretical and conceptual framework of international relations as a discipline. Now, then you will be briefly exposed to some political ideologies, issues in world politics, and the impact that it has on the major revolutions as the global development and in respect to global development and sustainability. The step two follow-up approach will be that students will be exposed to the role of international organizations the perceived inequality in global economy, the role of small power in politics and environmental policies, and it will provide you a broad overview of the major political issues, forces and developments, and key controversies in the region using both academic sources and other official documents. I actually encourage, there is a selected number of readings that I have in mind, including videos, but for the moment, the first subject today that I will cover, to just have a brief idea of what I feel is relevant, is a case study. And this case study is the Chinese 100 Years of Humiliation and a Historical Perspective in International Relations. I will not go so much in detail on the dates and times, and I will just give you a brief overview of what has happened in the past, and then a Q&A, followed by a Q&A where you can ask me what you feel or some clarification that you need. And the follow-up for that will be how it impacts today in our modern life. So as I just briefly, I have a small PowerPoint prepared, so I can share it with you guys later after at the end of it. For the moment, don't worry about taking too much notes, because it is important to just have a brief overview of China. So today's focus is on China's 100 years of humiliation and how it has its focus on regionalism and contemporary international relations. Okay, many years ago, before colonialism was implemented, China was a monarchy. China is a very important role to play historically in international relations, because we should look at China and understand what has happened in the past, what was its failures, and what has developed them to be what they are today. Because China is the world's largest population, it is viewed to be the world's future super number one economy. It is viewed by 2035. So what has happened in the past that has transpired today where they are? Now, in a nutshell, China was basically a monarchy for many years. Its civilization has been more than 2,000 years of in existence, and it was ruled by basically kings or queens who have a lineage of who to take over and stuff like that. In the 1600s, but we won't go exactly that far. Basically, 1600s, there was a admiral, Yap. His name was Admiral Yap Aloy, who was interested to discover the world. So basically, he was like a Christopher Columbus of China. So this Admiral Yap had got the emperor's approval to make a lot of vessels to travel Southeast Asia and some parts of Europe as well, to visit and understand. So basically his job was a trading mission, try to understand what was happening around them. So at that time, China was possibly one of the largest maritime superpower in the world. We are talking about 1600s. Now the emperor agreed, and they have left a lot of footprints in Southeast Asia. A notable footprint would be in Malaysia, where they had set up, where they had visited the Straits of Malacca. The Straits of Malacca is a very important part of the flow of economics in terms of international relations at that time. Today, the Straits of Malacca basically that covers Singapore is the main gateway for oil and gas, which China uses today. So, in 1600s, you had vessels that were coming from China as maritime envoys. They were basically called, envoys or emissaries of the kings, just to have a look. Till today, you will find many historical buildings that have been constructed in remembrance of Admiral Yap at that time in Malacca. So when they came to that part of the world, the one thing that we have to understand, which later on I'll give you selected readings to read and watch, is that China never came to conquer the world at that time. They basically was peaceful, and they wanted to establish relations for trade or for understanding their neighbors. You must understand, at that time there was no NATO, there was no GATT, there was no WTO, there was nothing. So it was very, very in the early beginning stages. Part of my other course subjects include India, include some other places, and you will observe how the Chinese went to these different countries versus how the Western powers came to these different parts of the world to do it. Now, to establish trade, because trade at that time was the main thing. Everybody wanted to establish trade, some possible relations, and develop. The Chinese did not come and conquer. They did not change political systems. They just observed and had their missions. However, when the Admiral Yap finally completed his trade missions around the world, and when he went back to report back to the emperor in China, basically what happened at that time is that the emperor felt that there was no need for the Chinese to establish foreign relations. There was no need for the Chinese to engage with the rest of the world, because the Chinese emperor said, we have tea, we have porcelain, we have land, we have agricultural products, we have everything. Why do we need the world? So this is a critical point for our discussion in the near time, is because subsequent to this movement, what the Chinese did was they closed their economy. They closed their efforts of international relations. They felt that it was no need for them to be part of any region. They were independent of themselves, and they wanted a closed door policy. So China, after these trade missions, engaged in a long-term closed door policy until the 1800s. Okay, so I'm giving you the backdrop of what happened before the 100-year humiliation of China. Now, when the relevance, when after in the 1800s, the British, the French, the Spanish, and a few other Western countries were beginning to expand new territories. They needed to trade, and they needed to import important things from around the world. So naturally, the two main countries that the European powers wanted to explore was China and India. for today's purpose, we are going to talk about China. The European powers needed to come to China to basically try to sell something and to buy something. So there's some trading activities. However, at that time, in China, as I mentioned, China had a lot of useful things which it didn't have to import. And the British main, what they realized was that they needed to import tea, silk, some other products from China, porcelain from China back to what we know today as United Kingdom. It was at that time England. So the British had established what is called the East India Company. Now, this East India Company was a private government-linked company. It was not exactly government, it was private but backed by the government. So it's a government initiative, but in reality, it was basically led by the government of England, and at that time was under the Queen of England. So when they came to China, they realized that there wasn't much for them to do, because for England to export at that time was basically potatoes, which the Chinese didn't need. They didn't have much equipment. They had weapons, basically weapons, a lot of weapons, guns, ammunition, gunpowder, cannons, things like that. But from the Chinese, the British needed tea. Tea was a very critical part of the British imports into China. As a result, what happened was the British imported a lot of tea back to China, back to UK, and they realized after a few years that a lot of their foreign reserves was going to China. So there was an imbalance of trade. So this was a unequal relationship which the Chinese didn't have anything to complain about. But for the British, they were getting upset because they needed to buy from them, and the British and the Chinese didn't need to buy from them anything. So a lot of gold and silver was moving from the West to China. And the Chinese began to be very rich, and the British realized that they are losing a lot of money from this trade. So this is how you can look at international relations and economic trade relations come into play. The British had sent many envoys to the king of China, the emperor, and said, we can do this, we can do that. But the emperor said basically, no, nothing much to cooperate. So finally, the British found a way to do business with the Chinese. They began to sell them opium. It was initially told that it was a medicine and so many things, but basically it was a drug trade. So this is what the British did to China. They got the whole country to be affected by the opium trade, and opium became such a problem that the Chinese government lost control of their economy, their reserves, their everything, because people were not in the mood to work. Everybody was relaxing, and people were being addicted. And that became a big source of problem for the Chinese government, or the Chinese monarchy. And the British was making a lot of money. Now, naturally, the emperor also was very concerned about these issues, and he had sent his team of people to the ports to stop the drug exports. But what the British did was they managed to bypass channels of importation into China by doing business with regional heads, similar to mayors of regions, and these underhand tactics made a lot of imports of opium readily available. So finally, when the hello hello sorry so yeah, okay.
Okay.
So basically what happened was the British parked their vessels some distance from China, and smaller ships would bring it into China and sell it. I'm going into the details of how they started with this international relations with China that led to China's downfall, because what happened was a complete collapse of the system. Uh, and many scholars have written tremendous articles on the 100-year humiliation and why China is what it is today. This is a very key factor. This was what has driven the Chinese to be what they are today, from these few things. And the main that affected them, that started this, their concern of regional relationship and international relations, was their experience that they had with such critical players in the economy. So going forward, when the Chinese, as I mentioned to you, the Chinese sent a general to solve this drug importation problem. The main thing was when the Chinese, hello, anybody coming on? When the Chinese came on with these issues, they sent a general, and the general won the battle. And basically there was two key players who were subcontractors for the British East India Company, and these two companies today still exist in Hong Kong. They are called Jardine Matheson. Jardine and Matheson, they were two guys who were the main importers. See, the East India Company did not want to dirty his hands. They just basically said, I have my subcontractors, I bring my vessels near to China and was selling it. Now, at that time, sorry, I couldn't see my video. Let me switch on again. One minute. Okay. Back in motion. Yes. I'm sorry for the disruption, but it happens on and off, so please be patient. Now, the Chinese general that stopped this opium and collected all this opium and burnt it and destroyed it and won, was later affected by the British, because the British sent warships to challenge the Chinese again and attack the Chinese. And this general was punished for destroying these drug opium products. Very important point. The British used their military powers to attack China indirectly, and used legal basis to claim for damages on these opium that was imported into China. Now, very important to understand how legal systems, how economic differences was resolved through military might. So as you can see, this is before United Nations and all that was started. So it was a bilateral issue. No third party could get involved, and it was only resolved through military strength. So China was given a bill of all the damages, and China could not pay because it was a huge amount of money. So the settlement for this issue was thought of by these two guys, Jardine and Matheson, to have the island of Hong Kong to be given to the British government, managed by Jardine Matheson, for 100 years. Now, as you can understand today's politics and international relations, you will realize the issues that are happening today in Hong Kong and the stress that is created by the people, by the international community regarding Hong Kong's independence, Hong Kong's freedom, the right of speech, and everything else. And what people don't understand today is what happened 200 years ago. So this is where things like that I will bring up to you to stimulate your mindset, and so that you will get a viewpoint of how it has affected things today. Now, Hong Kong was officially given to China, to British to manage. Of course, the British spent a lot of money and effort to develop Hong Kong, to create subways, to build a lot of buildings, infrastructure, legal knowledge, everything. So we cannot discount that Hong Kong is today what it is today because of the British occupation, or rather British colonization. But the basis of the colonization, if we were to be very honest, started from the drug trade. So this is something that we don't really hear about on a regular basis. But this is how Hong Kong was started. This is how we see the problems that Hong Kong is facing today. Many scholarly articles have been written on the 100-year humiliation of China. Okay, it has been stressed by Mao Zedong. It has been stressed by Deng Xiaoping. It has been stressed by Xi Jinping today. So today's policies of China is very much shaped on what this 100-year policy was, 100-year humiliation was. As you understand, humiliation means shame. So they basically, whatever you see today is a basis where they don't want to repeat history again. They are doing their best. You must understand, today's China is a 1.3 billion population. Their fundamental challenge of the Chinese government today is to feed 3 meals a day for 1.3 billion people. So as you can appreciate, to feed 3 meals a day for 1.3 billion people is not something simple to do. And therefore, because in this 100-year humiliation time, China, because after this was a critical moment, and in China, with this British indirect influence in China, a negative influence, China became broken. So the monarchy was gradually removed, and China was forced to develop. China went through World War I and World War II, and in World War II, because it was weak, it did not have a government that could manage to control everything, and it was not. It was floating, So in World War II, even a small country like Japan contributed to China's 100-year humiliation. Okay, a small country like Japan, and today, if you look at the reverse of the economies and international relations, Japan is very much dependent on China. British is very much dependent on China. Okay, today's America is a development of the UK in the new territories that we call America today, the main. So all this, the subsequent, when we discuss how it has shaped policies, what I would like you as the students to have a view is what has shaped China's fundamental policies. Of course, China had developments of the Communist Party. It went through World War II and all that. But the main critical point that all the Chinese leaders talk about in shaping China, modern day China, is the Chinese 100-year humiliation. So, and regionally, why this is a very important aspect. As you know, I'm sure, the seas around China is also called the South China Sea. And today, China is busy in expanding its territory in the South China Sea. We see many tensions going on in the South China Sea. And this developments, the root cause is because they want to stop, they want to, 1 minute. It's because China wants to establish its original territories or original views of what belongs to them. You must understand, because of this 100-year humiliation, China lost Hong Kong. Okay, China also lost. Can you see me? A minute. Okay. So China lost Hong Kong. China lost Taiwan, and China is very, very strong-minded to collect back what it has lost in these 100 years of humiliation. So that 100-year of humiliation has maybe affected almost 70% of communist idealism, or I wouldn't say China is exactly communist. It's probably more like a socio-economic country, because people do have freedom of choice in China. Many people have criticized China for being unfair or unrealistic or unable to or not competing with our in level playing ground. But we need to understand why China it is what it is today. The sooner that the world understand China, the reasons why China is what it is today, it will enable us to have a better understanding on China, without which we will never understand China, and it is very imperative that we understand China, because it is a partner that we need to have, that we will have in any case. Okay, it is a marriage that is inevitable, whether we like it or not. The question is, how do we manage our relationship with China? Okay, that it has a win-win situation. So by understanding this historical aspect, we will understand China, and from there, the critical thinking is, how do we get to understand them? And because in today's one of the biggest challenges of international relations today is the lack of empathy. And basically, empathy is understanding another person. Today, I think with coronavirus, a lot of labeling has been done. I will not say who is right or who is wrong, or whether there's any conspiracy theory of whether they developed the coronavirus or something like that. But the main thing, we are dependent on China for supplies. Okay, we are dependent on China for many, many things. Their participation in WTO was significant to the rest of the world, because at least they are playing by some rules. Okay, China is a critical part. I mean, we look at China from, I mean, if you imagine the old days where you have Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan, where today kung fu is no longer required. This is the evolution of China. You must understand that. And 70% or 90% of all our household items today comes from China. Okay, a TV 20 years ago would probably be manufactured either in Germany, or it would be manufactured in in uh, in in Japan, and it would probably cost $3,000 to $5,000 for a tube TV. But today you have LED TVs which is coming in a few $100s. So this is some of the warranted benefits that China has given to the world. It has made things more economical and affordable. But the problem with China is that it always wants to win. It never wants to lose. So, and it's the case with all economy, all international relations. Nobody wants to lose. The question here is, how do we establish a win-win relations with China? Okay. Now, the historical 100-year humiliation covers the damages, including the failure of their agricultural systems, the failure of their political systems, the attacks by foreign powers. The foreign powers will never say that they attacked it, but basically it was an act of aggression, economic or otherwise, military. The loss of territory during this 100-year humiliation, and the shaping of their political ideologies in this 100-year period. So I have given you a brief overview. I have some selected readings that I will share with you so that you can read it up. One of the best people who there's two schools of thought. That one is a pro-China and one is anti-China belief. I will not impose that you select on my views of what should be. You should have an analysis, and you should build your case on why you feel it that way. Because, and to this cause is to, again, I repeat, is to look at historical cause, the cause historically, and how it affects currently. Then you would be able to match it together. Because number one, history never lies. The interpretation of history is separate, but history never lies. And today's media is very vast. You have right wing, left wing viewpoints. So history will be able to guide your opinion formulation in international relations. So I think with that, I am happy to open any question and answers that you have for me on this subject. Brother, it's is it 1 minute? So maybe we'll have a question and answer during this time.
Hurmatli talabalar, kimni hozir savollari hozir bizni olib borayotgan darsimiz bo'yicha o'zinglarning savolinglar mana bu yerda domla ko'targan masalalar bo'yicha bo'lsa, tortinmasdan bu masalalarni oldinlarida ko'tarsangiz, biz hozir asosiy qismini tinglab bo'lib, Q&A qismi, ya'ni savol javob va diskussiya qismiga boshlardik. Leksiyalar qismida o'zinglarning faolliklarini ko'rsatib, mavzuni davom ettirishda sizlarni endi savollar va qatnashchilar kim birinchi kim savol bemalol.
Sorry, family call.
So I applied to students, our students, just to start the discussion part over the topic you raised and discussed. So
Okay.
open for the discussion.
Okay.
So some questions are written, you see, in the communication part of our platform. You can open and read it. You can see the first question was, what regulation stopped China to stop opium trade? Why could not it have if it was a clear manipulation?
Corruption. Basically, there was corruption going on.
It's about the period of the
opium
war in China.
Yes, during the opium war, China could not stop it because it was a very serious addiction problem, and this addiction problem was in all sectors of society. It was not only in the lower class, it was in the middle class, and it was in the high class. Even emperors and people in the court, emperor court was also addicted to opium. So it could not stop because in the ports there were like mayors and governors, and these mayors and governors was basically controlling the importation, so they didn't. You must understand, at that time opium was something new to them. You see, this opium was actually produced in India, and at that time it was something new. So the moment opium started to come into China, people didn't understand how serious the addiction can be, and at that period also there was famine, so people didn't have food, life was bad, they were needing a way to find a way to solve their psychological problems. So the problem was that, to answer your question, why it could not halt, they did not understand how serious the thing was. It came into the country, it conquered the country. By the time it decided to stop it, they were already in a debt and they were addicted to it. As a result, because of the military strength of the British, this became an issue for them. You know, they could not solve it. I trust that is the question. Now I need the questions to be asked in English, but I will try my best to translate on Google. 1 minute.
These are not questions actually.
Oh, comments maybe. Okay, sorry.
Another question is about naivety of China, because at that moment, the Chinese emperor said directly that they didn't need any kind of international corporation.
Yes,
And at the same time, they accepted opium, which of course they didn't need at all.
correct.
And of course, they didn't check it. But even the fact that opium was something new doesn't prove the fact they accepted something new, which without any kind of regulation or check.
Okay, you must understand, customs control was not so advanced at that time. Where you have HS code, and whether this is. I give you a simple example. Your question, I understand, is a very good question, because you're asking why they don't need it, or they don't need foreign things. How come opium came in? One was basically the corruption that managed to allow the thing to enter into the country, and then it became a habit that spread very fast. There was no regulations on what can come in and what not come in. Prior to this time, the British always was pushing, like, can we sell this? Can we sell this? Can we sell? They're trying to sell a lot of things. So basically, the British, conceptually today, when we import something, in example, Uzbekistan imports palm oil from Malaysia. We will check the quality and then we import. In those days, basically people were bringing cargo and trying to say, test it, have a some, is it good for you? You like it? So this is how trade was conducted in the past. I hope it adds some clarity. It was difficult it was very difficult for them to manage to control this. On a similar note, just to give you some insight, let's observe 100 years ago, guys was trying to bring opium into China. But 100 years later, guys tried to bring, guys brought cocaine into the US, and before cocaine came into the US, it was marijuana. But after marijuana, it became cocaine. And by the time the US government realized how serious the cocaine was to the American society, it was too late. It was too late. So you can understand the regulations and how it affected. It's a very specific way of controlling a country through drugs. This is a very bad thing, where people use a weakness and addiction to control the entire economy, because decision making, people, all the complete breakdown. Thank you. I trust you.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Okay, what do you think about China's future? Will its economy continue to grow, or will there be a collapse? I think China's future is definitely on a path that is very challenging, but it's definitely it is okay. to answer that question, let's look at China's role in economy. Uh, 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, or 1,500 years ago, maybe. Yeah, China was forming maybe 27 to 30 something percent of the global GDP. So it was historically a major player in the world. Historically, China in the role of the global economy. But because of this 100-year humiliation and other failures that came about, China lost their position. But it will come back to that position again. You must understand why I talk about this 100-year humiliation. The Western powers have been around for 200 years. In these 200 years, they have created a power imbalance. Okay? So when there's somebody who has done something for more than 1,000 years, definitely he has the capacity and capability to come back again. It's a question of whether he has the system, the political will, and basically the DNA of the people is hardworking. So chances of it collapsing is very unlikely. The Chinese, you must understand, the Chinese system is funded, the economic system is funded not on debt. The US system is funded on debt. The US Treasury can print bills and they run their economy. Chinese system, in any case, it will have to be a zero-sum game. So I would project a growth rate of average 3%, real GDP growth 3% for the next 5 years. In consideration of the COVID, yes, we will have some negative forecast outlook for the next 18 months, but it will recover. And another main point to understand is that today we live in an inclusive inclusive economy. If China fails, the rest of the world fails. So it will not only be the responsibility of China to be successful. The rest of the world has to ensure China is successful. Why? So that A, we can buy from them things at a cheap price. Two, we can continue to sell to them at a cheap price. Example, Daimler and Benz. Today, Germany's exports depends on China. American soybeans, American corn, American cotton depends on Chinese consumption. If China doesn't buy, if China's economy collapses, then the whole world collapses. So I won't say the whole world collapse, but the whole world will be very badly impacted. Okay. Today, when at the beginning, when China had coronavirus at the height of the pandemic, supply chain disruptions affected the rest of the world. Okay, we could see masks becoming 50 cents a piece, 60 cents a piece, 3-ply masks. Today, we can see it coming down to 2 cents a piece. So, just for your understanding how important China is to us. Do you believe its political system is going to change? Now, 1 minute. One minute. Okay. Sorry, the webcam was not working. Now, I think China is still in its evolution, but I don't think China will. Okay. This is a very sensitive question, and let me be as factual as I can. I presume that your political system is going to change, where you are referring to whether it is going to be more hello, whether it's going to be more democratic, or am I right to understand that that's your question, whether it's moving in a more democratic? Okay, so if my personal view, democracy is a luxury. It is not a necessity. Okay, when you deal with 1.3 billion people as a world population, you don't have the time and luxury to ask everybody how he feels. So uh, let's be honest, by the time somebody has to take decision for everybody, it is a weighted consensus. Today, if you tell me that China doesn't have a proper, it's a very oppressed system, it is a very tough system. No, it's not. Okay. Why I'm telling you this, that it is not, because example, 100 million tourists leave China every year. Okay, 100 million tourists come back to China every year. Okay, so nobody is feeling that China is bad, that is lack of democracy. So China has evolved. Deng Xiaoping has introduced many reformative measures that are practical and valid today. So I think a full democracy will not happen in China, and it's a good thing that it doesn't happen, because if you take a case study, you compare between China's development and what has happened in India, where it has a higher sense of democracy. It's a very big difference. The advancement of China versus India is very great. China has advanced, progressed more, and I think in part mainly was because of its political system. So I hope that addresses your question. Next question: why does Great Britain need China, because it has already colonized India? Very good question. Because India alone was not enough. They needed to conquer the world. They basically, the business model of you're welcome. The business model of colonialism was go in, trade, and then take that country's products and trade with other people. You see, so you must understand, at that time there was no US dollars, so the British pounds was equivalent to the US dollars at that time. It was a major currency, and it was a one world order, where the British was trying to establish a one world order. So I hope that explains why it continued to colonize but technically the Britain did not colonize China. It 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 uh, it dominated their economy. It tried to dominate their economy. It did not manage to colonize, but it tried to influence a lot in China, by making China give away concessions, profitable concessions, to to Britain. Okay, and China and India, if you look at it, it's a very big population. So it is a way for them to trade in a big way as a consumer market. Okay, so I think that answers your question. I hope so. Okay. Next question. And after the Opium War, China opened up to some Western great powers. Why? Most welcome. Why does Britain share? I didn't get your question. After the Opium War, China opened to. Why does? Okay. China tried to balance their political and economic relations by trying to get, okay, if this guy was giving me, because the British was trying to sell weapons, cannons, and all this. So the British, the Chinese tried to balance their relationship. So the British was not, as you know, nobody actually managed to conquer or colonize China. So the Chinese also was balancing their relations with these foreign powers so that they don't get overly influenced by one particular group. But you can see today in China the influence, the balance of that. Example, in Shanghai, you will find the French quarters, some area where you have a lot of French people. The British system is still very much in power. Look at Hong Kong today. It's still very influencing. They still want to issue passports for Hong Kong citizens. So you can understand that there was a lot of these things. I hope that answers your question. China announced the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which connects Asia with Africa and Europe via land and maritime, along with 6 corridors. So carrying out this, what kind of political advantage does China want to get over Asia? Okay. I have given some thought on this Belt and Road Initiative. It has positive aspects to both recipient countries and collaborating countries, and also China. But remember, China is China, and any country that implements such system wants to win. It doesn't implement to lose. So China has and main is supply chain. Supply chain to these countries. It is not about constructing a big port and the road and railway. Why do we construct railway? Because China wants to export their cargo uninterrupted and in an efficient way without challenges. So having such an integrated supply chain has many positive impacts to both, mainly for China, mainly. Okay, so carrying out what kind of political advantage? Basically, when they carry out such a thing, they are benefiting from the economic leverage it has over over the Chinese, over the other participating countries. The six corridors, as you mentioned quite correctly. So it's a very good question you asked, and the Chinese have learned their lesson from the British and from the other foreign powers. So now it is using that same trade relation. You can understand why it's using the same business model of trading to colonize the rest of the world. I'm not saying it is, but it is coming to that. Thank you. Any more questions? One more here. Once again. Okay, I'm reading the comments. 1 minute. China is currently a superpower, but do you think a great project like the Great Chinese Dream? I think the Great Chinese Dream was not a big thing. That, I mean, it is revival. I think the Great Chinese Dream is basically already more or less implemented, because everybody had the American dream, and China's, media has such a way of promoting lifestyle that, oh, let's have an American way of life. So the Chinese wanted to have their Chinese great Chinese dream. But don't forget, what Chinese has accomplished in the last 20 years is that it has reduced poverty and increase a great number of middle class. Okay, that transition from an agrarian state to being how do you say uh, export-based economy with a more bigger middle class. So they have already achieved a lot in that. So it is still on now. The problem about the great Chinese dream is that the middle class now will want to be improving again. So how do you maintain a sustainable income bracket and level of meet the level of expectation of the people? This is a ongoing evolution development in China. Right now, their challenge is that they have a bigger middle class, and how do you satisfy the middle class wants? This is their current challenge. And of course, poverty is still being addressed, but they have made significant solutions to their how do you say, their poverty alleviation initiatives. So, any other questions? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Krishna.
Yes.
We are really glad to be here. So my question is, today we can notice that the center of economic development shifting from Europe to Asian region.
Yes.
What do you think about this case? What are the reasons of these changes?
Okay. The first, your question is why the economic development is becoming more involved in Chinese in Asian
No.
countries, right?
Why the center of economic development is shifting from Europe to Asian Atlantic region?
Okay. What again, please? Why it moved to Asia, right?
Yes.
Traditionally, in the last 200 years, the development, I mean, the industrial revolution, third industrial revolution was going on, industrial revolution was going on in the Western countries. Okay. And when cost of product, as I mentioned to you, the TV analogy, 30 years ago, a TV, I remember I'm 46 now. So at the age of 29, 30 years. Okay, when I was young, maybe 11 years old, my family bought a VCR, okay, JVC model. It was at that time was 1,000 plus dollars for a VCR, VCR. Today, you can buy a DVD player for $20. So the JVC model was produced in, I don't know, was it in Japan or it was in Europe? We had a TV that was German brand, Grundig, that was costing a huge amount of money, and that was produced in Germany. Today, you can buy a LG or Samsung manufactured from China. So, cost of labor, number one. Two is the expectation of labor in Asia as a job expectation is easier to manage than that of Europe. Okay. In the year 2000 an average salary in Vietnam was about 100 US for 1 month for making factory of clothes. And the evolution, and this is a very good question you mentioned, because labor intensive, even though China has a very huge labor force, the labor today is becoming has graduated from labor intensive to labor intelligent services. So people from apparel manufacturers from China is moving to cheaper manufacturing plants outside of China. So basically, it is the cost of production. Okay, the cost of production in these countries are lowered. Therefore, it enabled a huge amount of growth rate to happen and to promote that. Okay, that expansion growth. So you can read a little bit on this point from the Tigers of Asia. Okay, and a good case study to have to review would be how about Singapore as well. That will answer your question very well. I
Okay.
hope I. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, what do you think about Deng Xiaoping, because he renewed Chinese communism and I think he started? Yes, Deng Xiaoping was a very, very far-sighted man. He was so well respected that Henry Kissinger and Nixon met with Deng Xiaoping as well. So you can understand Deng Xiaoping had a vision. He's a man of vision. Many and he was very active. Deng Xiaoping, he went to even to Singapore. He flew to Singapore to have idea what's going on, how it's going on. He had the vision and ability to make the deals with Japan. So that Japanese companies would come over to China, even though they had a political issue before, even though Japan tried to attack China or attacked China during World War II. Deng Xiaoping disregarded this point, but he needed food, he needed work, he needed people to have that possibility. So he's a very critical player that developed China. So if you notice today, Xi Jinping is being compared to Deng Xiaoping a lot in the Chinese media. So yes, you are right. He started China's development. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. How is right that China's experience of humiliated become how is right that China's to hold a leading position in the international system? Okay, because it's very simple. When you have a bad experience, you will learn from that bad experience. Okay, and that bad experience has enabled China to learn from that bad experience, and it did not want to go back into that bad situation, you know. So it helped them to develop themselves, not to go back into that situation. I hope that answers your question. What is the impact of US and China trade war on India? Okay, this is a very again a very in every crisis there is an opportunity. This is what I firmly believe. Of course, there is a lot of similarity between China and India, you know, because China and India are both countries which are energy import dependent. This is the difference in China. This is so the impact of the US-China trade war on India will be or is basically India is forced to take a choice, okay, of who it is supporting. Now, in this case, India and the US share a common opponent, which is China. For India, India is always looking to export its products, export its human talents, export its resources to foreign countries. It's dependent on imports. For China, for the US, they need to balance their trade balance. They feel that basically the Americans feel that it's unfair trading practices of the Chinese, and therefore they have this huge gap in their trade imbalance. India and China, India views China as a competitor in every sense, and this also is when I mean every sense, it means of in all sectors of economics, in terms of border security, as you know, Kashmir, in terms of military as an opponent there, because they are very geographically located. So this is a very critical thing for China. In fact, today you see this issue with Kashmir is also a result of what the British and Americans have done before that causes it today. So India's impact will be in the short term. If it continues its economic sanctions on China, India will lose. Because India, you cannot replace Chinese infrastructure completely overnight. India is not ready. India is not ready to take over. In one item that you produce today, example, an iPhone has 42 to 56 parts, which are imported all over the world, and probably maybe half of these factories are owned directly, indirectly by Chinese. So you can't say that India is able to function standalone. So we still are very dependent on India. India is very dependent on China, but it has to manage its political decisions. I hope that answers your question. What do you think? How China is managing to be world number one's most powerful and being a socialistic politics at one time? Okay, I think a good case study, a comparison for China. Okay, your question is you're most welcome. Your question here is basically socialist party as a socialist party, how does that help, or is it an advantage or disadvantage for them to be number one? Let me tell you what I feel currently is happening in the world. Many of the countries today are dependent on national bailouts today because of COVID. All private sectors, or what we call the free economy, has failed. So we are, in fact, in today going back to be a social democratic phase. If you look at America, you have a democracy that is still dependent on national economic support. So with national economic support comes political, a kind of socialist environment in the economics. So I don't think it will have a big challenge for them on this being a socialist country. I think it's actually good that they are a socialist democratic country, because decision making, for the mass is more workable when you have so-called Politburo status. China does, as I mentioned, China does not have the luxury of a totally free and democratic system. It's almost impossible. So manages to be the world number one. It is trying to be number one, but it will become, but it's a matter of time. Maybe 2035, maybe 2030. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, brother.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Professor. It was a great presentation and great discussion of the very interesting, very important issues of contemporary regionalism and its place and role in global process and contemporary development. That's why, Ram, once again, thank you very much. And thank you for our students and participants for involving themselves for such lively discussion. I would like to invite everyone today who participated in our current lecture and presentation from Professor Mahmoud for tomorrow's topic and tomorrow's lecture at the same time at 11 o'clock. And it's a great pleasure and honor for us to continue our meetings and the classes with such prominent expert of his field, of international economics and political development, like Ram Muti. So, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So tomorrow we will be happy to meet you at this platform at the same time, 11 in the morning, to continue. But I'd like to ask you one thing. Should we continue today's introductory topic tomorrow, or should we move to a next topic, next issue, as you indicated in your syllabus?
I think we can continue on China after the we have now basically discussed the cause. So
Yes.
the cause, and tomorrow we can talk about the effects. If it's okay with you guys, what do you think?
Okay. Yes, sir. Very much.
So
To wrap up today's meeting,
yeah.
we'll be happy to continue tomorrow at the same time.
Okay.
Thank you. Regarding the topics you wanted to ask our students to like reading and writing assignment over the introductory topics, what should we do? Should we follow your advices and recommendations and you send it to me before, or what do you think? What is your suggestion?
Yeah, I think the selected readings are good to
follow.
Yes.
Okay. So in that case, I will share the syllabus and questionnaire, as you mentioned, to our students to start working on these analyses and to be prepared for the continuation.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum. Bye-bye.